Picture this. You are 23 years old. You are sitting in the nose of a B-17 Flying Fortress, 25,000 feet above Germany. The temperature outside is 58 degrees below zero. The plexiglass around you is so thin you can see every puff of black flak blossoming in the sky. Picture this. You are 23 years old. You are sitting in the nose of a B-17 Flying Fortress, 25,000 feet above Germany. The temperature outside is 58 degrees below zero. The plexiglass around you is so thin you can see every puff of black flak blossoming in the sky. And then, in 1 second, the entire front of your airplane vanishes. Wide establishing shot of B-17G in flight at 25,000 feet, wings frosted, contrails streaming. This is not a training exercise. This is not a Hollywood special effect. This is the true story of what happened to a B-17 on the afternoon of November 2, 1944, when a direct flak hit sheared away the entire nose section, leaving 2 crewmen gripping bare control cables in the freezing slipstream, pulling with their bare hands to keep a dying bomber in the air. The question is not whether they would survive. The question is how they did it and what it cost them. Wide aerial shot of B-17 with entire nose section blown off, jagged aluminum, freezing air streaming in. This is the story of a navigator who refused morphine, 2 engineers who became human flight controls, and the 10 longest minutes of the Second World War. Extreme close-up of 2 bare hands reaching into slipstream toward exposed steel control cables, fingertips red and raw. Aerial establishing shot of IG Farben Leuna-Werke synthetic fuel plant in Merseburg. Smokestacks, flak batteries. The date is November 2nd, 1944. The location is Merseburg, Germany, home to the IG Farben Leuna-Werke, the single largest producer of synthetic fuel in the entire Nazi Reich. By late 1944, this plant is the jugular vein of the German war machine. Without its fuel, the Luftwaffe cannot lift off. Without its fuel, the panzer divisions cannot move. The 8th Air Force has targeted this facility before, but the Germans have learned. Flak gunners pulled from the defense of Paris now ring the plant in concentric circles of steel. Close-up of 447th Bomb Group tail markings, triangle L on vertical stabilizer, ground crew pulling chocks. On this morning, more than 1,100 American bombers take off from England, the largest single deployment of heavy bombers in the European theater to date. Among them is a B-17G Flying Fortress of the 447th Bombardment Group, 708th Bombardment Squadron. The pilot is 23-year-old Second Lieutenant Jerome Rosenblum, but the man the crew will come to depend on is not at the controls. Medium shot of Second Lieutenant Robert E. Famoyer in navigation station, hunched over charts, protractor, and pencil. His name is Second Lieutenant Robert E. Famoyer. He is the navigator. He is from Huntington, West Virginia. He turned 23 just 2 days ago. This is his 5th combat mission. Close-up of Famoyer's face, young, calm, oxygen mask at neck. Famoyer is not a big man. He does not shout orders. But he has one quality that will define this day: absolute, unshakable composure. In the nose of a B-17, the navigator sits directly behind the bombardier, surrounded by charts, compasses, and the delicate instruments that guide the bomber to its target and back. It is a position of immense responsibility and, on this mission, immense danger. Wide interior of B-17G waist section. Gunners checking .50 caliber M2 machine guns. Shell casings on floor. The formation climbs through overcast skies. The target is 350 miles from the English coast. The men check their oxygen masks. The gunners test their .50 caliber machine guns. The 4 Wright Cyclone R-1820 engines from outside, propellers spinning, frost on cowlings. The 4 Wright Cyclone engines drone their familiar, reassuring rhythm. Close-up of Norden M9 bombsight eyepiece. Bombardier's gloved fingers adjusting knobs. No one knows that within hours, the nose of this aircraft will be gone, and that the man who must bring them home will be lying on the floor, bleeding out from a dozen wounds. Wide aerial shot of massive bombing formation crossing German border. 1,100 bombers to horizon. By 1300 hours, the formation is crossing into German airspace. The weather is clear, perfect for bombing, but also perfect for the gunners below. The bomb run begins at 27,300 feet. The temperature is minus 60 degrees Fahrenheit. The plexiglass nose grows brittle in the cold. Frost forms on the inside of the windows. The bombardier, hunched over his Norden bombsight, calls out small corrections to the pilot. Wide shot from ground in Germany, looking up at bomber stream. Black flak bursts peppering sky. And then the flak begins. Medium action shot of German 88mm flak gunners at battery position, loading shells, muzzles elevated. Veterans of the 8th Air Force described the flak over Merseburg that day as something they had never seen before. The German gunners have been reinforced. They are no longer conscripts and old men. They are experienced anti-aircraft crews who know exactly how to lead a formation at 27,000 feet. One veteran of the 447th Bomb Group later wrote that the flak was so thick over the target that one would think that one could walk on it. Extreme, wide, aerial shot of bomber formation, flying through forest of flak bursts. Dozens of black puffs. Black bursts blossom in clusters of 20, 30, 40 at a time. The B-17s fly through a forest of exploding steel. Close-up of bombardier's hand on bomb release switch, knuckles white, target visible through Norden sight. Pause. For 3 terrible minutes, the formation holds steady. Bombs away. The aircraft shudders as 10 500-pound bombs drop from the belly. The crew feels the sudden lightness. The pilot begins the turn away from the target. Wide aerial shot of bombs falling from B-17 belly. 500-pound bombs tumbling toward industrial plant below. And then the world explodes. Medium shot of 3 successive flak explosions detonating directly beneath B-17. Black smoke rings, orange fire. 3 anti-aircraft shells detonate in rapid succession directly beneath the B-17. The first bursts near the nose. The second tears into the number 2 engine on the left wing. The third shreds the number 3 engine on the right. Wide exterior shot of wounded B-17, number 2 engine smoking, number 3 trailing oil, nose section tearing away, formation ahead. The bomber lurches violently. The nose pitches down. The cockpit fills with the smell of burning electrical wire and hydraulic fluid. Through the smoke, Rosenblum fights the controls. The number 2 engine is dead. The number 3 engine is losing oil pressure fast. The bomber is falling out of formation. But the worst damage is in the nose. Low-angle interior shot of Femoyer thrown to floor of nose compartment. Shattered plexiglass and debris raining down. Flight jacket torn. Second Lieutenant Robert Femoyer is thrown to the floor of the nose compartment. He does not remember the impact. He only remembers the sudden cold. The freezing air roaring through holes that were not there a second ago. Close-up of Vermoyer's back and side. Flight jacket shredded. Blood seeping through wool lining. Shell fragments embedded. He tries to stand. His legs will not move. He looks down. Shell fragments have torn into his side and back. His flight jacket is shredded. Blood is pooling beneath him on the aluminum floor. He cannot count the wounds. There are too many. The radio operator later reports that Vermoyer was hit in the back, the side, the legs, everywhere but his arms and his head. The crew rushes to him. The flight engineer grabs the medical kit. Someone pulls out a syringe of morphine. Someone else shouts at Vermoyer to lie still. Extreme close-up of morphine syringe in Crewmen's gloved hand, needle glinting. Vermoyer's pale face, shaking head. But Vermoyer shakes his head. Close-up of Vermoyer's eyes, wide, focused, refusing to close. Instrument panel behind him, a ruin of shattered dials. No morphine, he says. The crew does not understand. He must be in agony. The wounds are severe. He will go into shock. He needs the morphine. But Vermoyer knows something the others do not yet fully realize. Wide shot of destroyed navigation station. Charts scattered and bloodstained. Compass shattered. Pencils in corner. Freezing wind through missing nose. The nose of the B-17 is wrecked. The plexiglass is shattered. The instrument panel is a ruin of broken dials and sparking wires. The compass, the primary navigation instrument, is gone. The altimeter is gone. The airspeed indicator is gone. Medium shot of two crewmen lifting Vermoyer, one under each arm, grimacing, propping him against fuselage wall, legs useless. If Vermoyer takes the morphine, he will lose consciousness. If he loses consciousness, no one on this aircraft can plot a course home. The pilot can fly, but without a navigator, he cannot find England. He cannot avoid the flak belts. He cannot calculate fuel reserves or wind drift or any of the dozens of variables that separate a safe return from a crater in the North Sea. 500 miles of enemy territory lie between this bomber and the English coast. 500 miles of flak batteries, fighter airfields, and the cold, gray water of the Channel. Close-up profile of Vermoyer propped against fuselage, blood-stained chart in lap, pencil in hand, frost on eyebrows, eyes calculating. Vermoyer makes his decision. He will not take the morphine. He will stay awake. He will navigate. He will get these men home, even if it kills him. "Prop me up," he tells the crew. "Put me where I can see the charts." The flight engineer and the radio operator lift him gently, carefully, trying not to aggravate the wounds. They prop him against the side of the fuselage, facing what remains of the navigation table. The charts are scattered and blood-stained. The pencils have rolled away. But Vermoyer's eyes are clear. He begins to calculate. Wide aerial shot of lone B-17 limping westward, trailing smoke from both wings, losing altitude. Vast gray sky. The situation is desperate. Two engines are barely functioning. The bomber is losing altitude, dropping from 27,000 feet to 20,000, then to 15,000. The formation is long gone. This B-17 is alone over Germany, limping west at reduced speed, trailing smoke from both wings. Interior close-up of damaged flight control cables. Braided steel, frayed, slipped-off pulley, hanging loose in exposed fuselage. In the nose, Vermoyer works. He plots the course with whatever instruments remain. He uses the sun's position through the shattered plexiglass. He uses dead reckoning, estimating speed, wind, and drift from memory and instinct. He calls out headings to the pilot, one after another. 5 degrees left. Hold steady. Now turn to 270. now drop 500 feet. But there is another problem. The same flak burst that wounded Femoyer has damaged something else, something the crew does not discover until they try to change course. The secondary flight control system has been severed. On a B-17, the pilot controls the aircraft through a complex network of cables and pulleys that run from the cockpit to the tail. These cables are made of braided steel, each strand thinner than a guitar string. They run inside the fuselage, protected by aluminum sheathing. Under normal conditions, the pilot never sees them. But when the nose section was torn open, some of those cables were exposed. Worse, some of them were damaged. The cables that control the rudder and the elevators are frayed. They are not responding properly to the yoke. The pilot can turn left or right, but the response is sluggish, unpredictable. Close-up of airman's bare hand reaching out into slipstream. Fingers spread, about to grip steel cable. Wind tearing at sleeve. And then, at the worst possible moment, the cables jam. Extreme close-up of two bare hands wrapped around exposed steel control cable. Knuckles white, palms bleeding, frost on metal. Two men spring into action. They are the flight engineer and the top turret gunner, men whose names history has largely forgotten, but whose actions on this day defy description. They scramble forward into what remains of the nose section. The freezing slipstream tears at their faces. The wind chill at 15,000 feet is minus 70 degrees. They find the exposed cables. They see the problem. The cables have slipped off a pulley. The rudder is stuck in a slight left turn. The bomber is slowly, inexorably veering toward a known flak belt over the city of Hull. Medium shot of both airmen pulling on cables simultaneously, bodies braced against fuselage, faces contorted with effort and cold, wind whipping flight jackets. There is no time to fix the pulley. There is no time to reroute the cables. The only solution is manual. The two men reach out into the roaring wind. They grip the bare steel cables with their bare hands, and they begin to pull. Wide shot of B-17 cockpit to tail interior. Two men pulling cables in nose. Femoyer propped against wall calculating. Pilot at yoke further back. For 10 minutes that feel like a lifetime, these two airmen serve as the aircraft's flight controls. When the pilot calls for a right turn, they pull the right cable. When he calls for left, they pull the left. The steel strands bite into their palms. The cold burns their fingers. The wind tries to tear them away. But they do not let go. Close-up of Femoyer's frost-covered face. Lips moving, calling out heading. Eyes fixed on sun through shattered nose. Chart on bloody lap. Femoyer, propped against the fuselage, watches them work. Blood still seeps from his wounds. The cabin is so cold that frost is forming on his eyebrows. But he does not stop calculating. He calls out headings. He warns the pilot of flak ahead. He keeps this shattered aircraft on the narrow path to survival. Medium shot of two airmen still pulling cables. 10 minutes in, hands bleeding more visibly, faces frozen and exhausted, but refusing to stop. Wide aerial shot of B-17, turning slightly, course correction visible, city of Halle and flak belt falling away, North Sea appearing on horizon. 2 hours pass, then 3. The bomber limps across Germany, through Belgium, over the coast. The North Sea appears beneath them, gray, cold, and endless. But it is the North Sea. They are almost home. Wide establishing shot of English coast appearing beneath B-17. Cliffs, gray water, runway in distance. Bomber low on altitude, trailing smoke. Femoyer has not stopped working. For 2.5 hours, he has navigated without instruments, without oxygen, without the use of his legs, without morphine. The blood on the floor has begun to freeze. His voice is weaker now, but his calculations are still accurate. Low-angle shot from tarmac at RAF Rattleston. Wounded B-17 on final approach. Landing gear down. Nose missing. Both trailing engines smoking. The English coast appears. The pilot radios ahead to RAF Rattleston in Suffolk, home of the 447th Bomb Group. The runway is in sight. The landing gear comes down. The wounded bomber settles onto the tarmac with just enough fuel to taxi clear of the runway. Wide shot of B-17 taxiing to stop on runway. Emergency vehicles rushing toward it. Ground crew running alongside. Fuel vapor trailing. The engines stop. The crew sits in silence. They are alive. They should not be alive. But they are. Medium shot of crewmen carrying Famoyer on stretcher off aircraft. Flight jacket stiff with frozen blood. Face pale and still. Frost on eyebrows. And then Famoyer finally accepts the sedative. They carry him off the aircraft. His flight jacket is stiff with frozen blood. His face is pale beneath the frost. They rush him to the base hospital. But it is too late. Close-up of Famoyer's hand, still holding pencil, stained with blood and ink, lying motionless on stretcher blanket. Second Lieutenant Robert E. Famoyer, age 23, died approximately 1 hour after landing. He never lost consciousness. He never stopped navigating. He never took the morphine that could have eased his final hours. For his actions on November 2, 1944, Robert E. Famoyer was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor. He remains the only American navigator to receive that distinction in World War II. Slow zoom suggestion. Close-up of repaired B-17 weeks later. New nose section fitted. Fresh olive drab paint over scars. Taking off at sunrise. The 2 crewmen who pulled the bare cables survived. Their hands were bandaged for weeks. They never spoke publicly about what they did. When asked, one of them simply said, "We had a job to do." The B-17, its nose gone, its controls shredded, its floors stained with blood, was repaired and returned to service. It flew again. It carried other crews into harm's way. And like so many bombers of the 8th Air Force, its story faded into the vast archive of forgotten history. Final fade. Wide shot of modern West Virginia State Capitol hallway. Sunlight falling on display case containing Famoyer's Medal of Honor citation and photograph of young navigators smiling. But Robert Famoyer is not forgotten. His Medal of Honor citation hangs in the West Virginia State Capitol. His name is carved into the walls of the Air Force Academy. And every November 2nd, somewhere in America, a veteran of the 447th Bomb Group remembers the navigator who refused morphine, who lay bleeding on the floor of a shattered B-17 and steered his crew through 2.5 hours of enemy sky because he would not let them die. This was just one of countless untold stories from the Second World War. A story of bare cables and frozen hands, of a navigator who gave his last hours so that 9 others might live. Subscribe to World War II-Records as we continue to bring these forgotten chapters of history back to life.